and welcome. In this video, we are doing two examples of graphing a quadratic function given the equation in vertex form. Now, in my class, we call this form the pretty point method, as we get pretty points out of this formula and graphed onto our x and y axis. All right, let's go ahead and jump in. So for the vertex form, you need to remember that anytime you are dealing with an h value, you are thinking the opposite of what you see. So for example, if you see a positive 2 here, your h comma k, your vertex point, has an opposite h. So if we see a positive 2, in reality, we have a negative 2. Now your k value is exactly what it is. There's no changes. So if I see a net minus 3, I keep that negative 3. So this is our vertex. So that's step number 1. After that, you're going to do a t-chart. Now let's do one here. And I'm going to write my vertex point kind of in the center of it. So that's going to be a negative 2, negative 3. Now the other two x values that I'm going to select are going to be one above and one below, or you can do one that's very close to your x value on the vertex. So for example, I'm going to choose negative 1 and I'm going to choose negative 3. So I get to use my calculator on this if I need to, but I don't think we need to here. I have negative 1 plus 2 squared minus 3. Now where did this come from? That kind of just magically appeared. So I went into our original equation, which is this one here, and I removed the x and replaced it with an input of negative 1. So I'm kind of plugging and chugging at this point with our equation. Negative 1 plus 2, that is a positive 1. 1 squared is 1. 1 minus 3 is a negative 2. So when our input was a negative 1, our output was a negative 2. We're going to do that one more time. This time our input's going to be a negative 3. So here is our formula. I'm going to leave some space instead of writing x. So here was originally our x. Instead of x, I'm going to write our input of negative 3. Negative 3 plus 1, negative 3 plus 2 is a negative 1. Negative 1 squared is positive 1. 1 minus 3 is a negative 2. So when our input was negative 3, our output was negative 2. Once you have that, you are ready to sketch. Now, again, we are human. We are not a computer. So our sketch is going to be that. It's going to be a guesstimate of how it's going to look. So I'm going to do one here. It doesn't have to be too big. I have a negative 1 and a negative 2. I have a negative 2 and a negative 3. And I have a negative 3 and a negative 2. Now, which point is your vertex? Now, your vertex point is this one here. We want to remember where our vertex point is because that vertex point will give us a vertical line for the axis of symmetry. So this is our axis of symmetry where we have x is equal to a negative 2. Again, we have to make sure we understand what our parent looks like. In this case, we have an exponent of 2. That means we have a quadratic equation, which means we will have a u-looking curve. So even though it kind of looks like it can be like maybe an absolute value, maybe it could be a quadratic, because we do have a exponent of 2, therefore it has to be a u. Now there's two options, either a happy u, meaning like we are increasing, so both arrows are going up, or we can have a sad face u, which is both arrows pointing down with a decreasing function. Because we have an a value of 1, which is positive, it's secret. Like it wasn't there originally. I just put it there. But it is a secret 1. If it's not there, that means you have a positive a value, which means you will have an increasing u function, a quadratic function that's increasing. And you can just do a curve pointing upward. All right, let's do one more. Steps are exactly the same. Let's start off with our h comma k for our vertex. Again, anytime you see inside here, inside the function, we are going to do the opposite of what we see. So if I see a positive 4, in reality, I'm going to take a negative 4. This k value, I'm going to keep exactly how it is. So if I see a minus 1, I'm going to keep it. Doing a t-chart here, I'm going to write my x and y value here. For the vertex, I'm going to choose 2 points. So this this one here is negative as well. That's okay. I'm going to choose a -3 and a -5. Plugging in my equation, plugging into my equation, excuse me. So here's my x value plus 4. That's going to equal to y. Now I'm going to write this. Didn't mean to move that. I'm going to write this twice. 1 for my input of -3, 1 for my input of -5. So then here I'm going to replace x with -3. Here I'm going to replace x with -5. Now be careful when you're doing this. Make sure you're following the order of operations. So parentheses go first, then goes exponent, then goes multiplication, then goes subtraction. So this here is being multiplied. So let's do the inside first. -3 plus 4 is a 1. I have 1 squared times -2 minus 1. So this 1 squared is just 1. Remember, multiplication before subtraction. So I'm going to write it here for more space. -2 times 1 is a -2, minus 1 is a -3. So when my input was -3, my output was -3. Let's do that one more time. -5 plus 4, that is a -1. A -1 squared is a +1. +1 times -2 is a -2. And I still have this -1, which means I have an output of -3. So when my input was -5, my output was -3. Let's sketch this real quick. There's some space up here, so I'm going to shift this up just slightly. Start with our vertex point. Our vertex point was -4 and 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, and -1. The vertex point gives us our line of symmetry, our axis of symmetry. There it is. And we have 2 more points. We have a -3 and a -3. And we have a -5 and a -3. Now it does look like we're going to be curving downward, which makes sense because we have a -a value. So when we have a negative out in front of our equation, that means we have a reflection across the x-axis, meaning our original smiley face has flipped upside down. Let's go ahead and connect it. Make sure you understand what your parent looks like. Your parent is a quadratic because you have an exponent of 2. So you're going to connect it in a downward U. Make sure you also have arrows. Now I want to point something out. We are humans, right? So I'm not a computer. So if you take a look closer here, you can see that my point and my curve, they don't really match up. That's okay. The best way to fix that is just to make your point bigger. All right, beautiful people. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.